Go ahead, Doc.
Okay, good evening. I just want to make sure that we understand that everything tonight is copyrighted, and any unauthorized reproduction or distribution of a copyrighted work is illegal. Criminal copyright infringement, including infringement without monetary gain, is investigated by the FBI and is punishable for up to 5 years in federal prison and a fine of $250,000. Okay, so with that, we're ready to begin. So we're going to be talking about a term that, after much investigation, after years of personal experience and some research online and things like this, I coined a term called medicosis. And so we're going to go through what is medicosis here. It's a noun, and it's an artificially induced mental state of deference to MD-directed allopathic reductionist rituals and or treatments. Any comments? Marvin, do you have any comments?
Well, it really is a word that should be in the English Webster Dictionary, and it probably eventually will. But medicosis, if you think about it, it's something has to do with that. A lot of people are enslaved to medicosis and don't even know it. So we're going to talk tonight about what that is. What's the picture of medicosis? I mean, how do you know when you walk into your primary care provider or an HMO? How do you know that you're not being a victim of medicosis?
Doc, have you seen any situations like this in your life? Just a simple yes or no.
Yes.
Pardon?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's take a look at the second definition here. The preconditioned tendency of a patient to uncritically accept MD-directed allopathic reductionist treatment, often to the exclusion of a more natural approach to healthcare. Now, one of the things I want to emphasize here is that this is not an anti-medical video tonight. This is a recognition of a condition that develops, just like with anything else. I mean, you can have certain things develop around any particular. I mean, just like, for instance, in the military, one of the things that happens is PTSD, and it's a mental condition, and we need to recognize it. Okay. Have you ever? I mean, it's just like this. You ever hear the statement, "A fool and his money are soon parted"? Yes, I believe that you will probably not find this term anywhere. It is a term that the medical profession doesn't want to have you see. It's a term that I coined myself after much, and I've shared this with a few people, and a lot of people are afraid of this term. But I think we have to recognize that. I mean, it's just like anything else. Caveat emptor is a real important term. Let the buyer beware. When you go to your medical doctor, he's selling you something. And that doesn't mean it isn't appropriate to buy. You know, there are some procedures that are appropriate, but not every medical procedure is appropriate. And a good example of this is the COVID-19 fiasco that's being uncovered now. And so when I say, you know, the preconditioned tendency of a patient to uncritically, now not every patient does this. You know, a lot of patients are very savvy about themselves, and they know better about certain things. We're talking about uncritically accepting MD. And what is Marvin, I'm just going to ask you what the term MD-directed allopathic reductionist treatment mean. That is a lot of big words there.
Well, I guess the best definition or example would be the VA. Think about it. The VA does not support chiropractic healthcare. They do not support alternative to medication. And so everything they do is pharmaceuticals, and it's allopathic directed. It's basically, it's a reductionist treatment. Everything that the VA does is about drugs and mechanical procedures. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. The VA has helped a lot of veterans, but when it comes to pharmaceuticals, we don't have the ability to repair and rebuild the body with pharmaceuticals. But it's interesting enough you bring this up, because when I type in medicosis in the comment section on the chat, guess what? Google will now allow me to, I guess AI is looking at the word medicosis. Look, it doesn't come up on a dictionary, so why should it allow me to post it? So it's denying me to post it even on the chat here. So that's for the listeners that don't even see this, hearing it, through audio. Let's spell this word medicosis so they can understand what we're coming from. It's MEDICHO apostrophe SIS, medicosis. You will not find the English dictionary. You will, and it's interesting, is Google will not even allow you to post it on the community chat here. So I guess we need to really kind of dive into this, Dr. Wiedemann, and figure out why we have this problem. I mean,
Yeah,
this is
well,
the exact problem.
I have medicosis.com, but I haven't posted a website yet. And, it's going to take a lot of resources to cover medicosis. This is like a bombshell, because this is going to grow. Okay. And I'm urging all of our listeners out there to begin using this term. Share it with your chiropractors first. Okay. And we're actually going to produce a brochure later on. I have produced one of them already, but we want to refine it a little bit. But when we say allopathic, what is an allopath, Marvin?
You've got me on that one. So you're going to have to help me understand what that means. I didn't brush up on my allopathic dictionary today.
It means a cure-all. They can cure every disease. Pathology is a disease. All pathologies they can cure. Remember me telling you that the only three people that can honestly say they cure anything are the butcher, the tanner, and the tobacco farmer. Anybody that's selling you a bill of goods that they can cure everything is lying to you. Okay? They're not telling you the truth. They're fibbing. Okay? So number 3, let's take a look at this. We're delving this a little bit deeper. We're drilling down deeper. A state of mind resulting from single or multi-generational cultural influences exerted by medical personnel in the practice of medicine as dictated by the medical industrial complex. This state can preconditions masses to submissively accept MD-directed allopathic reductionist rituals and or protocols, compelling them into treatment regardless of the lack of scientific basis for such treatments. Now, that doesn't mean that no treatment has scientific basis. Now, where would reductionist treatment be appropriate, Marvin, in your mind?
Well, first of all, is that, let's say, as a veteran, right? I have a severe headache. Okay, go to the VA and let's get a diagnosis. Now, with the VA, they will do tests to determine what causes the headache. They do not know how to recognize the symptoms of Paget's disease or trigeminal neuralgia. They don't know how to recognize the symptoms of what causes a headache. They have to do tests. A lot of times these tests don't come back correctly. And so they'll make an assumption based on blood tests, or they make an assumption based on x-rays, MRIs, and CAT scans. By the way, every time you get an x-ray, you are causing damage to your body. For example, and just use a little perfect example, expecting mothers, when they go in with their midwives, and they do an ultrasound of the baby, high resolution ultrasound. They can see the baby, they can see the arms, the development stage of the baby, and all that stuff. High resolution ultrasound does not harm that unborn baby. You can do the same thing when you moms go in for a mammogram. Do not allow the doctor to give you an X-ray, a mammogram. Ask them for a high resolution ultrasound. That high resolution ultrasound can pick up any kind of breast tissue that is abnormal, just like it can pick up the sex of a baby boy. You can see the sex of a baby boy at the second trimester. You can see that baby's second time from a high resolution ultrasound. Matter of fact, the Harvard Medical School nurses study of 10,000 nurses. They did a study based on mammograms and chest x-rays and all that stuff. They didn't finish that research. You can still find that research, and I challenge all you ladies out there, do not allow your doctor to x-ray your breasts. Ask them for a high-resolution ultrasound. And that's a perfect example of some examples of what's happening out there.
So basically, what you're saying is that the breast x-ray is actually an unscientific ritual or protocol. It has nothing to do with the actual science.
Well, I'm just a simple country boy, Dr. Wiedemann. If I have something safer and better, why not use that? Why are they?
What I'm just teaching what Dr. Wallach teaches. That he says they smash that breast between the X-ray film and the and whatever they put up against it. They smash it down as much as they can so they can get a broad field. And he says if they want to do that to your breast, he says you should ask the medical doctor first, put your testicles in there and let them squeeze those like that. See how they like it.
Well, Dr. Wiedemann, as a chiropractor, you've done a lot of x-rays, and x-rays on a skeletal system has a lot less radiation than x-rays on a mammogram. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Well, we have something called the inverse square law that says every time you double the distance from the, let's just talk, see, you have film object distance, then you have tube object distance, and then you have tube film distance. Well, let's just take a look at the x-ray tube from the film. It's like if you have a light bulb in a room shining on the wall, every time you double the distance, you dim, it's about 1/4 of the intensity that when it was up close. Well, in a mammogram, not only are you using really slow film, but you're also putting that x-ray tube right up against the breast. So there's a tremendous amount of radiation there. Now, when I was working in a research project, they actually took measurements of our x-rays as an upper cervical doctor, because we use lead filters to filter out certain portions of the field. It was way below what they had estimated the x-ray dosage was, because of the film screen, speeds. And I realize today is digital, but this is back before digital x-ray came about. And it was way, way, way below what was expected, because we have to have very precise x-rays with NUCA, with the upper cervical approach, because we make precise measurements. We have to have precise x-ray alignment. For one thing, aligning the x-ray reduces the amount of radiation too, because you have what's called a grid behind the patient, and that grid filters out scatter radiation. And so we were using like over 100 line per inch grids with, and I can't really explain that, but you have to shoot through all that. And if you have precise alignment, it reduces the amount of effort it takes to get through that grid. So, and then we have filters that we slip in that we, basically it's designed in such a way to give it the minimum amount of x-ray and still get a good clear image as possible. So, but I wanted to just give an instance of what reductionism would be. You break a bone, you go into the doctor, and he resets it. He reduces the condition, by setting the bone, and then he basically puts the bone in a cast, and that's appropriate. Okay, but trying to suppress symptoms with medication is, I am going to say that in many cases that is inappropriate. So that's my opinion for what it's worth. So let's take a look at some examples. Okay, we talk about the state of mind resulting from single or multi-generational cultural influences. Let's talk about the media, for instance. Let's talk about let's talk about some TV shows that have been on here. Okay, Hugh Milburn, Stone, was the best American known actor, best known as his role for Doc, Dr. Galen Adams, on the Western series Gunsmoke. Okay. Another is Dr. Kildare. Now, one of the things I want you to realize is that this is a public, this is a public relations TV show designed by these are fictional doctors, okay, and created by the author Max Brand in the 1930s and previously used in NGM in a popular film series and radio drama. The TV series quickly achieved success and made a star of Richard Chamberlain, who played the role of Dr. Kildare, along with ABC media drama Ben Casey, which premiered at the same time. Now, so you couldn't watch TV that night, at that time, without running into a medical show. And I remember both of them as a kid. And these were used by the medical profession because of their position in society to brainwash people into selecting medical approaches. And we could go farther back in time. I didn't have time to prepare for that, but there's plenty of videos that we can point you to that will show some of that. But here we have Vince Edwards, the American actor and singer. He was best known for his TV role as Ben Casey. Now, the ultimate in all of these was Dr. Marcus Welby, MD, as an American medical drama. Now, this is fiction, okay? These are fictional things, and they're designed with a psychology behind them, okay, of reductionism, okay? And to put fear in people's mind, if they don't see their medical doctor, don't obey their medical doctor, they're going to have terrible results, you see? And he made house calls on a first-name basis with many of his patients. James Brolin is his partner. Stephen Kiley is a younger doctor. And the funny thing is, the younger doctor was the traditionalist. And the older doctor was kind of the freewheeling, the free thinker, And in handling many of the medical cases, some common, uncommon, made it an instant hit for ABC. Storylines include impotence, depression, brain damage, breast cancer, mononucleosis, teenage obesity, juvenile diabetes, sexually transmitted diseases, epilepsy, learning disabilities, leukemia, hemophilia, paraplegia, dysautonomia, rape, Alzheimer's disease, and addiction to painkillers, among others. Now, these are, wonderful topics. Let me ask you this, Marvin. How many do you see in there that can be handled naturally?
Well, first of all, is this impotence? That's a common problem with men over 40. I've seen men in their 80s when they get on the basic 90 nutrients, and that problem went away.
Yeah.
Amazing.
How about
Amazing.
depression?
Depression, I see that a lot. And this is something about And we see this a lot about expecting mothers after the baby, after a second or third pregnancy, they go through what they call baby blues or postpartum depression. And that's because the body has been sucked dry of all these nutrients. That's because they were not supplementing properly during the pregnancy. And then, of course, the doctors want to put them on anxiety meds. And before you know it, these anxiety meds no longer work. They put them on stronger medication. Next thing you know, they're on psychotropic drugs, and they lose their ability to reproduce.
Yes, absolutely. And not only that, we're talking about depression still. Some people commit suicide over this. You try the medicosis approach to that, and people end up suicidal from this, and we'll talk about that more later. Okay, so brain damage. I mean, let's face it. If you damage the brain, the brain can heal to some degree. Now, it depends on what the damage is and so forth. So, let's face it. There are medical treatments that are appropriate. Let's say that they have with brain damage, there's a possibility that surgery might be indicated in some cases. Breast cancer. How about that? Can breast cancer respond to natural approaches, Marvin?
I have seen tremendous success with people who decided to give up all mammograms. They do breast examinations. They do high resolution ultrasounds if they choose to do so. They use the basic 90 nutrients. And even if they are in stage 2, stage 3 breast cancer, and this is so simple. Molly Smithson is a former oncology nurse out of Kansas City. She has given up her career as an oncology nurse, and all she does is teach people how to support and promote immune system. Her philosophy is that anybody who has cancer is a catastrophic failure of the immune system. So how do you support and promote the immune system? That's really simple. You give the body the raw materials it needs, and the body will give the immune system everything it needs to build a bunch of good guys. Okay. So think about this. Your immune system can recognize every mutated cell in your body.
Mm-hmm.
When you subject yourself to the medical doctors, chemo and radiation, chemo drugs kill good cells as well as bad cells. Okay.
Yes, they destroy both alike. It's like taking a shotgun. Let's say that we had a crowd with maybe 2 or 3 criminals in it, taking a shotgun to the whole crowd. I mean, yeah, you might get the criminals, but you might end up with some adverse reactions there.
And I want to add to that, Dr. Wiedemann. Give you an example. As a Navy SEAL, we were trained for hostage rescue. When we entered that room, we were absolutely trained to identify the hostage, identify the bad guy. And trust me, if we ended up taking out a hostage instead of a bad guy, it did not look very good at all. And the problem we have is that the medical doctors approach healthcare with a shotgun approach. Let's just blast it with a bunch of drugs. Yeah,
right. And Molly Smithson will tell you that. I mean, she's but anyway, okay. How about mononucleosis? And how about mononucleosis there?
Well, as I said, all these diseases that we've listed here, mononucleosis, teenage obesity, every one of them is linked to lack of nutrition. I mean, we can go into great depth and detail on each one of these, but if you are supplementing properly, and for example, teenage obesity, the reason, and I have a lot of people come to me all the time. We talk about obesity for a second. After my lectures, they come up to me and say, Marvin, says, I'm 50 pounds overweight. I'm concerned about my weight. And I always tell them, I'm not concerned about your weight. If you supplement properly, you're going to get rid of those cravings. Give an example. Any of you out there, they have horses. In the springtime, a lot of times you'll see horses eating tree bark, or they eat the wood off the barn door. Why? Because the nutrients in that wood is greater, higher density nutrients in there than in the feed or hay they're getting. So my point is this, is that horse has cravings. You and I have cravings too. They come in the form of sugar cravings. A sugar craving is nothing more than a lacking of nutrition. That's all it is. So when somebody's struggling with teenage obesity, they're struggling with controlling their cravings, their snacking. And our snack foods is designed specifically, instead of eating a half a bag of chips, you eat the full bag of chips. And now they have family-sized bag of chips, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
my point is this. I always teach, look, if you want to lose weight, you supplement properly. The proper weight loss program is giving the body the raw materials it needs, and you slowly lose that weight over time. These weight loss programs out there, trust me, I have seen them come and go, and people have results, don't get me wrong, but after they give up, after they stop that weight loss program, all that weight comes back and they add a little bit extra. And then they back to the next year's New Year's resolution and the next New Year's weight loss program. So if you truly want to keep that weight off, it's all about supplement properly, calorie restricted diet. Dr. Wallach has taught that for years, calorie restricted diet. If you consume more calories than your body can use, it's going to store it as fat.
Yeah, and there's two things in here that all you have to do is obey God's law, and you won't have problems with sexually transmitted diseases or rape. That's all you have to do. You know, God has built into his law, you know, things that protect us. And he says, thou shalt not kill, you know, also, but thou shalt not steal. See, but anyway, I just wanted to emphasize the fact that that this program was conditioning people with fear that the medical profession is really the only way, or that it's if medical doctors can't handle it, nobody can. You know, it's death. Like Alzheimer's is irreversible. We know Alzheimer's is not irreversible. Dr. Wallach teaches that. I think, is that a selenium deficiency or?
Well, actually, Alzheimer's disease was not even known before World War II. It's a physician-caused disease, according to Dr. Wallach. Alzheimer's is actually nothing more than a lack of good fats to the brain.
Yeah. Okay, and of course he talks about addiction to painkillers. Well, they would never have gotten addicted painkillers if it hadn't been for the medical doctors in the first place, or the big pharma giving over-the-counter painkillers also. And you stop and think about this. Pain killing is basically interfering with the nervous system so that the brain cannot respond to the condition there. And if you understand the concept of chiropractic in the maintenance of the communication between brain cell and tissue cell, anything that interferes between the brain and the body lessens the vital powers and brings a deadening of the sensibilities of the mind. When we say sensibilities of the mind, the ability of the mind to sense what's going on in the tissues. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying pain relief is never inappropriate, but anyway. So I just wanted to point out here that in his second season, 70 to 71, it ranked number 1 in the Nielsen ratings, becoming the first ABC show to top the list. The same year, both Young and Brolin won Emmy Awards for their work, as did the show for the Outstanding Dramatic Series. Young won a Golden Globe in 1972 for his performance. Members of the American Academy of Family Physicians served as technical advisors for the series and reviewed every script for medical accuracy. So you can see that the medical doctors were definitely behind this on TV. When did you ever see a chiropractor being promoted like this? When did you ever see anything about chiropractic other than mostly negative stuff in the past? So, okay, medicosis, and number 4. a mental disorder characterized by a patient's perceived incapacity to meet the ordinary demands of life without seeking MD-directed allopathic reductionist medical intervention, especially when caused by unethical manipulation through indoctrination, suggestion, intimidation, or legal pressure by health bureaucrats, medical personnel, the educational system, and or the media. Okay, when have we seen this happen? The intimidation and suggestion going on. Did we see that in the last few years with medicosis? I mean, with COVID-19.
We did. And Dr. Wiedemann, when I first retired from the Navy, I went in to get just a regular physical, and the medical doctor told me, my primary care provider said, "Oh, by the way, Marvin, your liver enzymes a little elevated. We need to do more research." Well, I was a little naive at that time. That's before I knew Dr. Wallach, and it took me 18 months from one specialist to the next, and finally. But during that time period, I did get on Young Dirty products. And I had great results with it. And finally, I was at this liver specialist. He's a young doctor. And he sat me down and said, Marvin says, we need to do a biopsy of your liver. I said, oh, hell no. You're not going to touch my liver. And he said, well, then I need to sit down and figure out what you're eating that's causing this elevated liver enzymes. And so I said, okay, well, I went through the list of things I have for breakfast and lunch and supper. And then when I listed the nutrition I was taking, he said, oh, you can't take any nutrition at all. You got to stop. And I says, okay, I'm done. I will not stop my nutrition. I said, well, I need to make sure that these nutrients are safe. I said, okay, well, you got an internet. Let's pull them up right now. I pull up the Ultimate Classic, the EFAs, the plant minerals. And I pulled up, I think it was the Ultimate Enzymes, and I printed them out, the supplemental facts for him. And he looked at it and said, well, let me come back in 2 weeks and we'll discuss what I discovered. Came back in 2 weeks. He says, Marvin says, there's nothing wrong with these supplements. I think they're great. The only thing you really need to do is because you have a little fatty liver, you need to exercise and lose some weight. Now, that's after 18 months, they bill my insurance company thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, being retired military, there's no better insurance out there than a retired military family. And so these medical doctors will pass the veterans from one medical doctor to the next, or they get you locked into the VA. And I'm here to tell you, you don't need to go down that path. And I can tell you all kinds of horrible stories I went through with my first daughter. My daughter Abigail was born. And just recently, when I went through with my VA evaluation, I had to put my foot down with some of these things that they wanted to do with me. He says, no, I do not have this problem. I want a complete blood workup to prove to you I do not have any cardiovascular disease. Well, they wouldn't. This is the ironic thing. You would think a doctor would agree to do a complete blood workup to confirm if there's any cardiovascular disease. I finally convinced him that we need to do a complete blood workup. And guess what? I have no cardiovascular disease. My high blood pressure was a direct result of severe whiplash damage from parachute accident back in October 1988. My upper cervical, when it goes out, my blood pressure spikes up, way up. And blood pressure medication doesn't work. Only the correction of the C1 Atlas is what reduces my blood pressure. I had over 6 months of documented evidence of this with my Anuka doctor. Before treatments and 30 minutes after adjustments, my blood pressure would drop anywhere from 40 to 50 points in 30 minutes.
Yeah, one of the things I want to point out here is the fact that in the early 1960s, after the death of B.J. Palmer, they didn't dare do it to him because he had the B.J. Palmer Clinic that had $1 million research clinic, which was a lot of money in those days. And he had a medical doctor on staff doing all the medical testing. found over 3,700 diseases that responded to chiropractic care. Well, the medical profession didn't like that. So they began a program. They tested it out in Iowa, where the Iowa Medical Society taught all their doctors to start disparaging chiropractors. And I grew up around that disparagement as a kid. I remember the attitude of our family doctor when my dad went to chiropractors, and the comments and sneers and things. And when I decided to become a chiropractor, one of our family friends came down from Wisconsin to visit. He was a medical doctor. You should have seen the look on his face, a horrified look on his face when I said I was going to become a chiropractor. And I believe God led me into this. I know he did. So sometime I'll tell that story. So let's go on to the next one here. 5, the tendency resulting from such manipulation for a patient to select MD-directed allopathic reductionist medical intervention, often to the exclusion of natural options such as Ayurvedic medicine, acupuncture, supplements, chiropractic, homeopathy, or herbal remedies. Okay. Number 6, think about this. The mental conditioning undergone by medical students through indoctrination, fear, fatigue, stress, intimidation, pressure, or desensitization, leading them to accept and conform to rituals and protocols established by the medical industrial complex. Also, the resulting state of mind of medical personnel. And finally, number 7, any addiction to medical intervention or to the practice of medicine itself. Okay. Now, the next term is related to this. It's a necessary term. It's medicitize. It is the verb form of medicosis. And so to artificially induce a mental state of compliance with MD-directed allopathic reductionist rituals, protocols, and or treatments through suggestion, conversational hypnosis, psychotropic drugs, or any other invasive medical procedure. And medical doctors, there are situations like in the legal industry, when somebody gets put in prison, they can force them to undergo medical, that's right, medicitize. They can force people to go through stuff like this through the courts. So the courts actually medicitize people, and they have medicosis, big time. Legally, we don't have freedom of choice in the legal industries. Now, one of my team members had her father had a condition called he had dementia, and he was in a assisted living center, and I actually introduced her to longevity, and she right away got her father on the nutrients and started seeing him come out of his dementia. He started talking and things like that. And she was very faithful in bringing him smoothies and everything she could to help him improve. And then this care center moved to a brand new facility. And when he got in the new facility, she had a real gorilla for the lady that was controlling that wing. They ended up taking her to court, taking away her medical power of attorney, and the rest of the family took over, and they starved and thirsted him to death. Marvin, you want to comment on that?
I was very much involved with this. I know Dr. Wiedemann, you went to court twice. They went to court twice, and the judge sided with with assisted living, the medical doctors. Even with all the evidence we had, and even chiropractic evidence, they would not listen to anything but what the medical doctor had to say. Now, what the sad part about it is that they forged her name to remove her from the the family's, she had medical power of attorney. A nurse forged her name to get somebody else in the family to be the medical power of attorney, somebody that would agree with their program. Well, what happened is that when they decided to remove life support, when I say life support, no more food or water, she watched her father literally shrivel up and die in a 7-day period. I can't believe, and I talked to her 2-3 times a day. She was crying and she said, please pray for me. Please pray for my dad. They're murdering him. I says, I can watch his eyeballs dry up in his socket. His tongue dried up in his mouth. And it was 7 days before he took his last breath. That's the kind of stuff you see that's happening in these assisted living facilities. If you care about your elderly and your senior citizens, and I can tell you horrible stories about these assisted living facilities, and I'm telling you here right now, keep them out of those assisted living facilities. Take care of them at home. Take care of them at home. You have a much better quality of life with your seniors and your mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. I had the honor of taking care of my father-in-law here at our home. We had a room set up for him, and I was there working with my wife, her dad, and I would sit up middle of the night. Just, we knew he was going to pass away. He knew that too. It was his last days, but we made him comfortable.
Yeah,
but we did not allow him. We did not allow him to become victimized of medicosis.
Yeah, and see, this is where Dr. Wallach talked about this being idolatry. Basically, and the thing of it is that if you just follow God's law, honor thy father and thy mother, thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. We have a directive from the Most High to do what we can to avoid this kind of stuff. Okay, number 2, to seduce, intimidate, manipulate, or otherwise influence someone into compliance with inappropriate MD-directed allopathic reductionist treatments, rituals, or protocols. Marvin, you and I talked earlier today about this, and you had some suggestions when you run into a medical doctor, how to handle things when you're in front of a medical doctor and they're trying to force you into stuff like that.
So my experience with medical doctors is, first of all, they think they're right, and they think that they rule you. So you cannot argue with them. And so a most recent case was, and Dr. Wallach taught me this. It says, if you go to your medical doctor, you listen to him, and you say, well, thank you very much. And it says, let me think about what you talk about. Now, you're going to leave that office without being combative with a medical doctor. Because if you start being combative with a medical doctor, and I'll give you an example. The most recent case I had a severe respiratory infection, which ended up, taking some antibiotics. And I specifically told my primary care provider, I can only have these certain antibiotics. The other ones will not work. Well, he wouldn't listen to me. And I finally gave in because I didn't want to make a scene, and I needed something. I took the medication, and less than 3 hours later, I was in the emergency room with a severe reaction to this medication. And of course, I had a hard time breathing. I was like suffocating. And so I explained to the doctor that there's only certain antibiotics I can use that my body can handle. And he's, well, we're not going to do that. I said, look, I wouldn't be here in the emergency room if I would have listened, if my primary care provider would listen to me. He gave me a medication I knew was not going to work. This is the only 2 meds, antibiotics that work for me. Well, he finally agreed to give me a prescription medication. And then I got a copy of my medical record before I left. I always do that. And when you go to the doctor, always ask for a copy of the doctor's notes medical record. And guess what the doctor wrote in my medical record? He said, and I'm not quoting, I was very combative. My wife was there with me. My wife was there with me. We had a discussion and disagreement about which prescription medications I should have, antibiotics I should have. I already knew what was allergic to, what I could have. And he put in there that I was combative because I disagreed with him. Now, I was in an emergency room because my primary care provider would not listen to me. He would not recognize the fact that only certain antibiotics worked for me. So that was my most recent run-in.
Yeah. So, the Dr. Mendelsohn wrote a book, Dr. Robert Mendelsohn. Look this up. I don't know if you can find the videos anymore or not, but he wrote a book called Confessions of a Medical Heretic. And he says, when you see an MD walking down the sidewalk, don't walk the other way, run. So
getting
anyway,
back, Dr. Wiedemann, I'm sorry, I do want to finish up my thought here, but when you get with the doctor, just tell him, says, well, thank you very much, and I'll think about this. We'll get back to you what my decision is. Now, you can always go and get a second opinion, but when you want to get a second opinion, do not tell that doctor you're getting a second opinion, because they all talk to each other, and if you tell them where the second opinion is going to come from, that other doctor is going to support the primary opinion. So always, always, always leave the doctor's office and keep the peace with the doctor. That doesn't mean you have to agree with him. You don't have to. He cannot handcuff you and force you to take medication. You have a choice. You have a choice. If nothing else, call Dr. Wiedemann here and say, look, I went to my primary care provider, or they want to do this. And is this something that I should be doing? Well, we have a lot of experience with Dr. Wallach of people who have chosen to take advice outside of the medical profession, because the medical doctors, they're only allowed to give you advice based on pharmaceuticals. They are not allowed to give you any advice about alternative health. They're not licensed. They're licensed to practice medicine. They're licensed to practice pharmacia.
Yeah. One of the things I want to mention, Marvin, is the fact that before Dr. Wallach came around, I raised 3 boys under chiropractic care. And we did not use medical doctors. We didn't have a medication in our house. We didn't have an aspirin in our house. No medications in the medical, other than first aid stuff, like Band-Aids and, things. We didn't even have ointments in there. We had soap to wash the wounds and things like that. But anyway, I mean, if they got sick, I took them down to the office and checked them, and they would be out of adjustment. I would correct them, and they would get well, and they'd go back to school. So, I mean, that's the health care that my boys had, was chiropractic care. Now, in chiropractic college, we're taught to know the limitations of matter. One day, my little boy slipped on a blast jacket that was on the floor in our living room, and sliced his head open on the corner of the door, and we had to take him down and have it stitched up. That was a medical incident. That was the limitations of matter. Chiropractic would not have been appropriate for that at all, in any way, shape, or form. So, medicitize, to interfere with a patient's choice of natural forms of treatment, such as Ayurvedic medicine, acupuncture, aromatherapy, chiropractic care, naturopathy, nutritional supplementation, homeopathy, or herbal remedies in favor of more dangerous, costly, or inappropriate MD-directed allopathic reductionist treatments, especially when such treatments, that's interfering with, and especially when such treatments result in death, disability, illness, or injury. Okay. To facilitate a patient's death, disability, or injury through compelled or forced compliance with inappropriate medical rituals and or protocols. And we've already talked about that before. Okay, we have another term here, medicide. Termination of human life by medical intervention, especially typically performed by medical professionals using MD-directed allopathic reductionist methods or procedures. This term primarily refers to medical doctors, but also includes paramedical personnel acting under the influence or direction of MD-directed allopathic reductionist protocols. And that term came about as a result of what I saw happen. Okay. Medicide, the mass murder of people by lethal medical mandates and or the broadcast of compelling propaganda that results in multiple deaths due to MD-directed allopathic reductionist methods. Where have we seen an example of that?
COVID.
COVID, or the treatment thereof, the inappropriate treatment thereof, the unethical practice of mercy killing, especially in long-term or short-term care to reduce resident populations in overcrowded facilities, or any other reason. Medical abortion is medicide. That's a termination of life. Okay, let's talk about medical assault. Intentional acts by a person, a person's that creates an apprehension in an individual or patient of an imminent, forcible, MD-directed, allopathic, reductionist medical procedure that the individual considers harmful, offensive, inappropriate, or in violation of their conscience or will. Has that ever occurred? Have you seen that occur, Marvin?
I'm making a comment here real quickly. Go ahead and ask me the question again.
Okay, medical assault. Intentional acts by persons that by a person that creates an apprehension in an individual or patient of an imminent, forcible, MD-directed, allopathic, reductionist medical procedure that the individual considers harmful, offensive, inappropriate, or in violation of their conscience or will.
Absolutely. When my first daughter Abigail was born, the mom, my wife had her water broke, and we didn't realize the water had broken. And so not until about 2 days later. So basically they induced labor. She was born, healthy baby, but her white blood cell count was elevated just a little bit. So they said, well, we need to keep her in ICU, make sure there's no infection, everything is fine. We didn't have a choice. So we're kind of naive about this. And now after 8 days and after 7 days in the hospital, they had all these different requirements that must be met in order for this child before she can go home. Well, one of them was she had to nurse every so often, and they had to measure how much she nursed. So they put a tube down her nose and pulled out all the milk from her tummy to measure, and then put it back in every 4 hours. And I said, look, the child is not able to sleep. It's uncomfortable. He's got a tube in his nose. And I says, let us go home. Oh, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that. So unfortunately, there's a couple next to us that had a premature baby born at 22 weeks. And it was on a breathing machine and feeding tube. And they would come there every night before they go to bed, come there every night, and, look at the share time with the daughter. We got to know that couple real well. Well, then what happened is that on the sixth day, it was my turn to go up and feed my daughter. Okay, give her the bottle. In the elevator was this couple with this baby in this little incubator. I said, oh, why are you guys going home? I says, oh, our medical insurance ran out, so they let us go home. They gave us all this free stuff. The incubator, the feeding machine, the breathing tube, the feeding machine, breathing machine, everything they had. It was all on batteries. They sent that couple home with this infant that should have never been released from the hospital. But they did because the insurance ran out. So I went up and I went to the billing office. I said, I want a copy of my bill. Oh, well, that's for insurance company. No, did I need a copy of my bill? So we'll come back an hour. We'll go ahead and give it to you. So I came back and it was this thick, about 2 inches thick. It's printed out on this accordion, back in the old days when they had the daisy chain printers, Yeah, and so I looked at the first page, checked in. I looked at the last page. It's over $30,000 in less than 6 days. And I looked at line items, item codes. And when they charged us for an entire box of surgical gloves, every time the nurse came in, put on a glove. The first thing the nurse did is come in, and she typed a bunch of stuff in. I didn't know what she typed in, but I know now because I looked at the medical bill. It was the line item codes of what they're billing us. They billed us for an entire box of surgical gloves because she opened up the box and took out one pair. So I took this up to the hospital administrator. I walked into the office, and there's all these people. They're processing, I'm assuming, health claims. And I said in a very loud voice, who is in charge in here? And of course, nobody spoke. And this lady in the middle on a desk, I assume she was. And I looked at her because everybody's looking at her. So I looked at her and says, are you in charge in here? And she asked me, what can I do for you? I says, you released a couple with a baby on a breathing machine and a feeding tube that's born premature because the insurance ran out. My child is in NICU because I have good insurance, and you will not release me because they don't nurse when they nurse, she doesn't drink enough milk. I said, you gave me my insurance company. I slammed that thing on top of her desk so hard, it shook the desk, and she like almost jumped out of her chair. I says, I expect an answer from you and the doctors why we're not being released. Or otherwise, I'm going to call my insurance company and file a complaint. They gave me my insurance company. Well, guess what? We got to go home the next day.
Wow.
They were
that's intimidation. That's forcible MD directed allopathic reductionist. And once you're in the hospital, it's like being in a prison. You can't get out, you know. So, okay. Number 2, any medical mandates enacted by government officials or bureaucrats that creates apprehension in any persons of imminent forcible MD directed allopathic reductionist medical procedures that is perceived as harmful, offensive, inappropriate, or in violation of their conscience or will. Now, medical battery is the next one. An intentional, unpermitted act or treatment by MD-directed allopathic reductionist medical personnel causing another person to undergo MD-directed allopathic reductionist medical examinations and or treatments, including but not limited to devices, surgeries, injections, or the ingestion of foreign materials or substances, particularly when the individual perceives that these actions as harmful, unwarranted, or in violation of their conscience or will. Ultimately, medical battery concerns the right to bodily autonomy, asserting that individuals have the right to have their bodies left alone by others, especially in the context of medical treatment. And that is the conclusion there. Chance, do you have any comments about this?
Well, I got in just at the right time to listen to you guys. I'm going to make a comment about a friend of mine. Well, he's not really a friend of mine, an acquaintance of mine. We weren't really friends. Musician by the name of Bronson here in Fort Madison. And he died in Tennessee where he was living with his wife and family. And he'd been suffering since last fall when he did his last performance at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the Des Moines area. And he had to perform in a wheelchair. I didn't know why he was sick. I didn't know why he died. And then I found out that he died of cancer. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, this guy didn't like me. And I'm fine with that. A lot of people don't like me. It's cool. And I got ate alive by chemotherapy, parasites, medication, and he didn't have a chance in hell once he was diagnosed. Now, this is my feelings. My feeling on this is I was really upset that I didn't know this last year because I could have shared my knowledge with him. Even though he probably thought I was a kook. He definitely was one that had medicosis because he had all the proper treatments by all the medical doctors. Excuse me. Mustard gas, which is chemotherapy. He had medication, pain pills. His last year, his quality of life had to have been terrible. I just wish I would have known last year because I could have done something to help if he would have listened to me. Okay? Now, from my limited knowledge, and I'm nowhere qualified like these people here, there's two forms of two things that I know of for fact that causes cancer. One of them is snake venom, the body's reaction to snake venom. And the other one is parasites in your body giving birth, the parasites coming out of their eggs, and the eggs left in your body turn into mold, and mold into cancer. I have read numerous articles on this, numerous, okay, because I'm fascinated with the fact that medical doctors are not taught any of this. They don't know about these treatments, and they cannot recommend it. Now, just recently, fenbendazole, menbendazole, and ivermectin was released to the world as a possible treatment for cancer. The thing about it is, folks, it's a year too late for Bronson. A year too late. If you've got one that has cancer, don't buy the bill of goods that the medical doctors are trying to sell you. Call either one of these gentlemen, get a hold of Dr. Wiedemann, get a hold of Marvin, their contact information, or you can get a hold of Doc G and he can get a hold of them for you. Okay? But what you need to do is realize there is other treatments. The Army Corps of Engineers during World War II, in their booklet for treating disease and health problems that was put in the backpack of every soldier, states the cure for cancer is seaweed.
Well, I
They knew
think
back
I've
then, guys.
seen one of those. I've looked at that.
The seaweed, fucoidan, that's where fucoidan comes from, seaweed, and there's a lot of studies on fucoidan, and which helps with apoptosis of the cells. Apoptosis means that the cell has lost its ability to die off, lost its programmed death. Okay, but there's a lot of things that we do. And first of all, we cannot make any claims on this show. We cannot, diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. We're not allowed to do that. But what we can do is provide you the education with the resources. There's a lot of resources out there. And this is the thing that we want you to understand. You have choices. Now, if you choose to go to your medical doctor, that's fine. Matter of fact, there's people of the medical profession probably listening to us right now. We're looking for people of the medical profession that want to come on board our team, that are willing to help us. Because there's a lot of you out there that had a rude awakening during COVID. And you realize that you worked all your life and you thought you were on the right track. But all of a sudden you realize that you have become like the Gestapo, the SS officer. They had no choice in World War II. They were put in charge of exterminating the Jews in the gas chambers. Well, guess what? If they didn't do what they were told, guess what would happen to them? Well, you don't have to follow. You have a choice to make. A choice to make.
Yeah, that was the ultimate medical.
Stay healthy.
Yeah.
Because if you continue to give them poison, once you are willfully ignorant, there's consequences to willful ignorance.
Marvin, World War II was the ultimate definition of medical assault and battery.
Absolutely.
And medicide. There were many, many people that were experimented on medically there and killed through the medical procedures. And that's the ultimate of lifting the restraints off of. This is why the term medicosis has been coined, not to disparage anyone, but to alert people to beware and to be knowledgeable about your health. This is why we have the Academy website set up, is so that you can learn about your health and learn ways of approaching health in a natural manner without suffering from certain things that shouldn't be introduced into your body. We want to do it God's way and not man's way. Man's way is to, let's face it, medicine started right in the Garden of Eden. Why do you think there's a snake on the pole that's for the caduceus? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil was the devil offering something other than God's way for them to live, and they already had everything they needed there in the garden. They had the tree of life that would have perpetuated their life indefinitely, and instead they chose to follow the devil's temptations. And so what we want to do is do things God's way as much as we can. We want to love our fellow men, obey the commandments of God for our mutual happiness and benefit. So with that, do you have any further chance you want to wrap things up, what you've gathered out of what you watched here tonight, or what you know about medicosis?
I didn't even know what the term medicosis meant until Dr. Wiedemann explained it to me, and then I looked at my wife and realized there's a person there that has total faith in the medical, and that's why she has no use of her legs. She has total faith in the medical profession. She has no use of her legs. She's living in a nursing home. She's had total of 6 jabs. She's reverting mentally to 12 years old. And it's a downhill spiral. All I can say to you folks, this show is so important. You need to be listening to this show. You need to be rewatching this show. You need to be making notes. And if you have the capability, download the show and keep it for your records. There's going to be more information here than what you're going to get searching the internet for 10 days straight, okay? Dr. Wiedemann knows this stuff. Marvin knows this stuff. Doc G and I, we're just willing participants, and we are aware of the power of alternative medicine. So, with that, to say one other thing before I sign off, and that is I've gotten notifications today of more groups getting appointments. Okay? That's the intel that I could provide. More groups are getting appointments. People are having appointments at different banks today, and that's all I can give you. I think it's very, very positive, and I thank you for having me on the show. Please pay attention to these gentlemen, folks. They know what they're doing, and God bless you all. I love you all. Good night.
How about you, Doc G? You want to wrap it up with something? What do you got?
Oh yeah, you know I do. Yeah. My situation, and I'll try to make this as brief as I possibly can. What happened to me over the weekend, and I don't want to say who or anything like that. I'm not trying to do that. I don't want to cause problems. But I was really taken back because a family friend, relative, is a doctor, and I'm the father of 2 daughters, and my one daughter, I love both daughters, just like Marvin and everybody else. But when they're a certain age, you can only say so much. So when medicosis takes over and starts getting in their brain, and they're tied between, a family doctor and also what the doctor's saying and what you're saying, like, wait a minute, it's my dad over here, but medical profession knows a little bit more than my dad because he didn't go to school for it. So in your brain, you're thinking that. And at the same time, you're like, well, wait a minute, my dad knows me a little bit more than that. So it's like you're torn between, and I was so torn. And I was told to step out of the room, which made me fierce. You want to talk about a Papa Bear? I was really fierce. And I called Dr. Wiedemann, and I talked to him, and I said, Doc, listen, I have an issue here. And he says, it's medicosis. It's medicosis. That's all I'm going to say. I'm trying to also let the person know, my daughter know, that she doesn't have to do everything that the person says, to research and look at things herself as if I wasn't here. So she would just be aware of what she was going into. But other than that, I am going through it right now. And it's not a position I would expect anybody to be in. It's not a position I expect anybody to be part of or understand unless you're in that position. And that's all I got to say. I feel for the people that are in it. And I really hope that they research everything before they do anything or make decisions based on what medicosis does to people. Because even though it's medical, doesn't mean it's right. There you go.
Yeah, very good. Well, I'll tell you what, go ahead, Marvin. Do you have something to wrap this up with?
Well, all I can say is this: we just touched the tip of the iceberg. We're future shows. We're going to talk a lot more about this, giving examples. We're going to arm you with all the information you need to be able to walk into a doctor's office and know what your rights are and how to deal with this stuff. Because some of these situations can get real ugly if you don't understand how to respond to the doctor.
One of the things I want to give you a final thought is that your chiropractor is considered a primary care physician, believe it or not. And you have the right to have a second opinion with your chiropractor. So if you don't have a relationship with a chiropractor, give me a call. I'll try to refer you to someone in your area if I can. But keep in mind that it's my belief that utilization of the Dr. Wallach's protocols along with chiropractic care are one of the finest ways that you can preserve and prolong your health. So with that, I'd like to say good night.
Good night, everybody.